All right, there's a life force in here tonight. Do you feel it? I look around this room and I see potential. I see the future chairman of a Fortune 500 company. I see a famous rap artist. And I see the president of the United States of America. Or England. No, I see Max Goldblatt joining us in the Movieland spotlight, an actor, writer, editor, and director from Los Angeles, known from his appearances in Heavyweights, Bushwhacked, and my favorite, Sticks and Stones. Thank you so much for joining us today, buddy. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Now, let's play a fun game that helps us learn each other's names.
We already know each other's names.
You got it. Silence. Just wanted to know a little bit about how you got started in the film industry and who inspired you.
The biggest inspiration would be my father, who's a noted film editor named Mark Goldblatt. He edited a lot of great films in the 80s and 90s for people like James Cameron, Paul Verhoeven, and Michael Bay, among others. And so I grew up watching him work, and I grew up, he kind of gave me my love of film as a film viewer. But also kind of the understanding growing up in Los Angeles that one could have a career in this kind of work and in the film world. As a child, I was a bit of a ham, bit of a character, and doing school plays and stuff like that. And I would ask my parents, like, "Hey, could I get an agent?" And they were like, Let's wait a little while. Let's see if you're really actually passionate about this. Because, you hear so many stories of child actors, kind of whatever, having bad situations. And they wanted to make sure that I was actually passionate about doing this before trying to, audition and stuff like that. And I kept at it and eventually found an agent who represents child actors. And Heavyweights was like the second job I ever booked. I had auditioned for not even that many things, but was cast in Heavyweights. And it was quite an adventure. I mean, I was like 11 years old, I think. Most of the other kids in it were a little older. And it was, a number of them had been in like the Mighty Ducks and things like that. So, my mom and I arrived on location in North Carolina, and it was not like Meet Your Heroes, but like, I know those kids from other movies. And like, I learned when we got there that Ben Stiller was going to play Tony Perkis, and I was a fan of his. So it was all just very cool, very exciting. So yeah, before Heavyweights, I had done one episode of a short-lived sitcom that was, a small role. And I had done some theater, but that was it really. I would say acting wise, that's probably the apex of the acting career. Like first one, best one, whatever. I was, as you know, I was in a couple other films around then, but Heavyweights is definitely my favorite of them from my child acting days. I think it's also probably the one that kind of has developed the most like cult following and fandom. So I'm very happy to have been a part of it. I look back on it with real fond memories.
Oh no, that's good to hear. That the inspiration came from family, and you had someone to inspire there, and like good for him to give you a small try there to just like see you build your confidence and you stay dedicated, and the reward came true. I mean, you got a really big film straight away. Working for Disney under all banners is a great film, and obviously like a lot of pressure, I would say, to do your first role. And how was it working on that set?
I mean, it was very much like being at summer camp, Yeah. It was a fun group of kids, a fun group of adults. It was Judd Apatow. It was early in Judd Apatow's career. He had already done the Larry Sanders Show, and it was early days for him. And he co-wrote the film with the director Steve Brill, and he produced it. And he was like in his early mid-20s, which is kind of wild now to think about. Yeah, it felt like summer camp. We had an amazing on-set tutor or teacher who's kind of not just doing school stuff with all the child actors, but is looking out for everyone's welfare and making sure that, they're not working longer hours than they're meant to and all that sort of thing. So we had this amazing woman named Lois Yarashevsky who had also been in that role on the Mighty Ducks film. So some of the kids knew her already. She was great, was very much is like a camp counselor, a very energetic woman. You know, our parents were there too. We all all the kids lived in a Holiday Inn hotel in North Carolina where they shot the film. They shot at 2 different summer camps that were close to each other and a number of other locations. Yeah, I mean, it was a blast. It's hard to describe it any other way. I'm sure for the adults, for the people making the film, there were all of the stresses that we know that, you know, as an adult, I understand come with the territory of making a film. And for someone like Judd, you know, it was like his first big movie as a producer. And, you know, there are a lot of stakes there as someone working behind the scenes now. I understand that. But from the vantage point of an 11-year-old kid, it was just pure enjoyment.
Yeah, well, it's glad to hear that it was a lot of fun for you guys out there on set. And as kids, you know, you want to have fun, especially being your first role. You probably thought it'd be a lot more work than fun, but yeah, it did look like a lot of fun being in that camp, and obviously all the stuff, which the camps are actually still there today. And actually, I just had a look at the website just before this interview, and it actually looks kind of the same. Like they've got the same, you know, blow up kind of things on the river and everything like that. So it looks like, yeah, it could be still Camp Hope in existence.
Yeah. You know, I was recently sent a video that someone who has a horror movie podcast primarily, but who lives somewhat nearby. I think he lives in Charlotte, North Carolina, but he took a trip and made like a half-hour YouTube video just filming all the locations he could and being like, you know, this part of the camp is where they filmed this scene, and kind of showing frames from the film. And it was very cool. It brought me back a little bit, you know, having seen the film somewhat recently, but you know, he films from his car as he's like driving down a driveway towards a camp. And I was like, I remember that, like catering was over there, and you know, our trailers were over there or whatever, you know, so the production offices were over there. And he was in the video, he said he couldn't find the chipmunk bunk, the inside of the bunk where the main kids were living. And he sent this to me, and I messaged him and said, well, the inside of that, he was looking through windows, right, of various buildings. And I said, well, the interior of that was built like on a soundstage or a warehouse or something like that. So there's a good reason you didn't see it, is because it doesn't really exist in the real world.
Yeah, I love those then and now videos. I'll definitely check that one out. And it's amazing, like those, you know, those core sets that you think would be on that location aren't there. Like in some places, yeah, like completely in studios, for example. So yeah, it's sad at some points. You think that this whole magical place exists and all those sets are all there together and you can visit and reenact the films. But yeah, no, that's one thing behind the curtain. We just shouldn't look.
Yeah.
But yeah, now, amazing cast. As you said, you got 2 Mighty Ducks there. You had Kenan Thompson. Do you keep in touch with any of the cast at all?
Yeah, you know, very recently I got to catch up with some of the cast members in person, which was really nice. It was like the day after the Oscars, or the night of the Oscars. I was watching the Oscars, and I got you know, just the timing of it, but I got a message from Tom Hodges, who plays Lars, who I haven't seen in some decades. And he said, hey, I'm going to get lunch with Tom McGowan tomorrow, who plays Pat. I thought it might be fun if you're around to surprise him. And he also contacted Leah Lale, who played Nurse Julie. I was the only one, I guess he only told me everyone who was going to be there. He told Leah that she would be surprising Tom, and Tom only thought he was going to be seeing the other Tom. So basically, and I'll send you a picture so you can put it in there. We had an impromptu little meetup, myself, Lars, Nurse Julie, and Pat, Counselor Pat. And it was very fun. We FaceTimed with Aaron Schwartz, who plays Jerry Garner. Yeah, it was not. It was real nice. I mean, it was surreal. I'll tell you that. It was like we're 30 years later, but in a sense, it was like no time had passed, or, you know, some time had passed. But in the ensuing years, it came out, you know, it wasn't a big success. Maybe they didn't know how to market the movie. Is it for kids? Is it for adults? They didn't put Ben Stiller on the poster. You know, as more and more people have discovered it on home video and streaming, and, you know, now it's like featured on Disney Plus app, you know, and more and more people, I think, you know, I see people sharing memes all the time, and it's I think we now have like our memories from when we made the film now kind of align with how everyone feels about it. You know what I mean? There was a period where we were all like, oh, that was so fun, but kind of no one heard about it, or it wasn't, it wasn't some monster box office. It wasn't Home Alone, let's say, you know what I mean? But now I think it has the respect that we always knew it deserved, or something like that.
This is one I definitely didn't catch at the cinema. Unfortunately, I did catch on videotape and watched it a fair few times, and I did love it at the time and thought it was a great film, and didn't know it was not a success, so it's quite a shame. But I did notice it was getting quite a push from Disney recently, which is great, on Disney Plus. Good to see it still kicking up, and I think it deserves a watch for sure, and some recognition. I mean, looking at Ben Stiller in the front center there, gotta say, how was it like working with him?
Well, it was funny. He was playing this adversarial character, right? He was the bad guy, and I don't know if he was like trying to do a method actor thing or what, but he kind of kept himself at distance from the kids. He was not obviously living in the Holiday Inn where all the kids were. He was somewhere else, but we saw him around, and he would interact with us, but not in the way that like Nurse Julie and Pat and some of the other, Paul Feig, who obviously we know has gone on to great success, who played Tim in the film. They would like hang more, Stiller didn't hang as much, but he was lovely, and, working with him was extremely fun. I remember there's a scene that it didn't get cut out completely, but it got shortened, and there is actually a longer version of it on the Blu-ray, which has a lot of deleted scenes. It's the scene where Tony and his henchmen are raiding the bunk and taking all the candy and looking, and they uncover various hiding places. And there was a moment where he and my character Philip had a bit of a standoff. Notices that I have a bulge in my crotch and asks me to unzip my fly, and I take out a big candy bar that I'm hiding in there. This got cut out of the movie because it's a little extreme, and they went with kind of a similar beat with Kenan Thompson's character, and he's got Pez that he's hidden in his sock. Kind of the same thing, right? Mine's like a little more vulgar version of that joke, but I remember he was right in my face. He's like, "What's that bulge?" And we both like kept breaking character and cracking up. Too funny.
Oh, it's good you got that interaction with him, with or without it being in the scene. Like, the experience is there, and it's more joyful for you to keep that memory in your mind. And one thing about his character, Tony Parkins Jr., he more or less plays the same character in this movie called Dodgeball, White Goodman. Would you agree?
Yeah, a lot of people have noted that Dodgeball, I don't know how many years later it is. It's a handful of years after Heavyweights,
yep.
But yeah, a number of people have said that Tony Perkis was sort of the blueprint for the Dodgeball character, and I totally see that. I think there may have also been a similar character at one point on the Ben Stiller show, so clearly that's like a persona for him, sort of both of them inspired by Tony Robbins, the self-help guru,
Yeah, I think it could be connected, like a hidden connection, like he changed his name to escape the shame,
Yeah, if you want to link the films like that, call Dodgeball an unofficial sequel to Heavyweights, I think you could.
Going back to Lars for a moment, my favorite character of the movie. Can you answer this question for me? Where is Lars from?
Far away. I always assumed, it's funny, in the script, I assumed Lars was from Sweden because I knew a Swede named Lars. But the accent feels a little more Germanic to me, German, Austrian. So I don't know. Yeah, I would guess Lars is from Austria. That's my guess.
That was going to be another question. I knew he put on a bit of a voice for it. Yeah, what's his normal voice like?
Oh, I mean, he's from Chicago.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say he has a Chicagoland accent.
Any other funny stories you got from making Heavyweights?
Well, there are a number of anecdotes. I am and was at the time a vegetarian, and this was the early mid-90s. There's a scene where my character is caught eating a hamburger that he's secretly gotten, and the rest of the kids bust in on him sitting on a toilet in the bathroom stall eating a burger. And so I, needed them to get a veggie burger. And at the time, veggie burgers were not ubiquitous. They were a bit of a specialty item.
Yeah.
And so it fell on the prop master to find, whatever, a box of veggie burgers. I think they did find the brand Garden Burger, which was kind of the pre-Impossible, pre-Boca Burger thing. So they found that, and I was happy they did. Although it's not like you ever see me taking a bite or eating or anything like that. Not the funniest story, but a relic of 30 years ago. Things were a little bit different, right? And there's another great detail that not everyone knows, which is when we were filming the sort of big food fight, like psychedelic orgy, they call it the food orgy sequence out on the lawn. Aaron, who plays Jerry Garner, he slipped. There was so much food on the grass, and
Right.
he slipped on something, and I don't know what the exact injury was, but they took him to the hospital. If he didn't break his arm, he fractured his elbow or something like that, but we needed to keep filming the scene, and it was nighttime. And, there was a local kid who was like his stand-in, who, when they were setting up shots and getting the focus and stuff, there would be other kids who would be standing in there. And they basically took Aaron's stand-in, who looked sort of like him, and they smeared chocolate and marshmallow all over his face. And there are a number of shots in that scene where if you pause or if you look closely, if you can tell that it's definitely not Aaron. It's his stand-in running around partying, just covered with food on his face. So, and another thing is the question I get asked the most when people learn that I was in Heavyweights is, did you get to go on the blob in the lake? And I unfortunately did not. I never got to. But speaking of injuries, there were a couple other people in the crew who, after a night of partying, it might have been when we were wrapped and finished shooting the entire film, a couple people hurt themselves on that thing. Maybe it's a good thing I didn't go on, because I might have gotten injured. You never know.
Yeah, the blob's definitely still there. That was one thing I said, just made it look like Camp Hope was still active. And it was the question I was going to say, have you ever revisited? But I guess it's just something you've not really done just by looking at the videos.
No, I never did. It would be fun to. It would be surreal, I'm sure.
Well, everyone can revisit Heavyweights on Disney Plus if they like, but yeah, Bushwhacked would be your next role, starring alongside the wet bandit Marv from Home Alone, Daniel Stern. Personally, I love this film so much. This one was also released the same year as Heavyweights. Did you film these two back to back at the same time? What a schedule.
Yeah, I think they may have, Heavyweights might have been in post-production a little longer, I think, but I was in 5th grade when we shot Heavyweights, and I was in 6th grade when we shot Bushwhacked. So it might have been within a year. And that was shot in Northern California and in Nevada, beautiful areas of the western part of the US, really picturesque. And what's interesting about Bushwhacked, and I only learned this recently, I hadn't watched it in years, and I watched it within the last year or so, just to check it out. And it's a fun movie. What I learned was that originally it was envisioned as potentially a sort of sequel to Home Alone, or a spin-off with Marv's character. And when you look at it, you can kind of see that he's playing a very similar character to Marv in Home Alone.
Absolutely.
Kind of the continued adventures of Marv. And it was also made by Fox, which made Home Alone. And Daniel Stern had a deal with Fox, whatever, to produce, star in, or potentially direct a number of movies. But for whatever reason, they decided it would be a standalone movie. It would not be the same character, but a similar character type. This guy, with a bunch of kids. I found myself as a child actor, being perfect as one of a group of kids, and so that was the second one for me. It was another fun group of kids, and we were all living with our parents in a ski resort, but it was during warmer months, obviously, up in Truckee, which is just a town away from Lake Tahoe. And Daniel Stern was lovely, was very fun. had some kids near to the ages of us, the kids in the film. So they were around a little bit. And eventually the production moved a couple times to be near various locations all around that greater kind of California, Nevada, Lake Tahoe border. And just beautiful sights and a fun time. I mean, the kids had to learn how to rock climb and like swim in rapids. And it was, obviously a lot of it is kind of faked with stunt doubles and movie magic and all that. But they did have us training with real great professional rock climbers and learning how to belay and learning how to like swim through rapids. I mean, wild stuff for a 12-year-old. Very fun experience.
Yeah, I didn't realize so much physicality was put and trained into preparation for that role, and that's insane. So obviously safety reasons as well, but I love your connection for Home Alone there, and I didn't really think it, but that's a great analogy, and it definitely worked. I wonder if they ever, probably did put that into consideration to make this a Home Alone movie. Like it really would have worked. It kind of seems like Marv's version of Cliffhanger mixed with Disney's Up.
Exactly. Like, what if we took this character from this movie and put him in that movie? I mean, that's how a lot of, there's not as much originality these days. I think a lot of producers and writers do work that way. What if we did Home Alone in space or whatever? But the other thing that's interesting about that movie, and I didn't know this at the time, but the first draft of it was written by, if not both, definitely one of the Farrelly brothers, under a pseudonym, for whatever reason, I don't know, which may have changed a lot by the time we shot it, but was first a Farrelly brother creation.
Yeah, I did have that noted down here to talk about. I do believe both of them plus someone else had a hand in it. So that's like coming from the makers of Dumb and Dumber. So it's definitely high credit there and something to be proud of working on. And obviously being, the writers and everything, they wouldn't have been on set. So it does distinguish things that you wouldn't know about.
Yeah. And, there were some other, aside from Daniel Stern, there were some great adult actors in that movie. You have a very young Ann Dowd who has gone on to do fantastic work. And Anthony Heald, who played the doctor in Silence of the Lambs, who runs the asylum, and meets a pretty gruesome fate at the end of the movie. At the end of Silence of the Lambs, not Bushwhacked. He meets some fate in Bushwhacked. I can't remember what it is, but and then you also have the great John Polito, who is in a number of Coen Brothers movies. If you remember from Lebowski, he's the detective who says, "I work for the Knudsens." This one line that I remember, and an older actor named Brad Sullivan, who was in like the musical The Fantastics and kind of has a longer career in earlier Hollywood.
Yeah. And that was also Brad Sullivan's last role in that film as well. Yeah. He passed away not too long after that. Yeah. That's really sad.
Yeah, he was real talented, curmudgeonly. John Polito was also curmudgeonly. They kind of put two curmudgeons together, but Polito was hilarious. I've always loved his work as an actor. And I remember while we were shooting the film, I was a fan of the movie The Crow, and he was in The Crow. And I somehow at a comic book store or something bought a set of The Crow trading cards that were tied into the movie, and he signed my trading card that had his picture of his character on it. So that was a prized possession of mine in my youth for a couple of years.
Definitely great cast to have worked with, and especially working with Daniel as well. He's got like obviously great films, not just Home Alone, it's City Slickers, and one of my favorites is a very acquired taste, Very Bad Things. Did you catch that one?
Oh yeah, I remember that one. A Peter Berg film. And to link things again, Peter Berg was in Heavyweights, had a very small role.
Yeah.
He and Judd Apatow are the kind of cafeteria workers seen briefly.
Right. Crazy film and all that chaos just for a $50 tip.
Right. And, also Daniel Stern directed Rookie of the Year.
Really? Yeah, that's wild.
Yeah, I got to catch up with Daniel Stern maybe 10 years ago at this point. A friend of mine from college, who's an actress, had worked with him on something, and he said, "Come visit my art studio," because now Daniel Stern's, he still acts, but his focus is sculpture. He makes some very large scale sculptures as his kind of passion project. And I know he recently also put out an autobiography, but it was great to catch up with him. It was also surreal, and especially just to be in his art studio chatting with him and reminiscing a little bit. But that was fun. And his son, Henry Stern, is a local progressive politician here in Los Angeles. I'm actually a constituent of his. He represents my area, so I think that's very cool too. Because I remember him being a kid on the set of Bushwhacked. I haven't met him since then, but you know, small world keeps getting smaller, you know.
That's good that you stay connected, and he's very humble. Sounds like a really good guy, and yeah, it would be really interesting to see him return to the Home Alone franchise, especially with Macaulay Culkin. Even at their age, like, I think it would work. You know, the Wet Bandits get out of jail, and they're old and everything at their age, and yeah, that'd be great.
It sounds like a no-brainer, right? Like, if they could convince everyone to do it. I don't know how much money it would take to convince everybody to do it. That tends to be the problem, you know. It's like, where's the Arrested Development movie? Where's the Community movie? And you got to imagine there's I won't do it for less than whatever, millions of dollars.
Either way, now I'm going to rewatch Bushwhacked and pretend it is the Home Alone sequel we didn't get.
Yeah, it's a whole new lens to view the film through.
For anyone else looking to revisit Bushwhacked, it is also available on Disney+. But yeah, your next role, the following year, keeping busy, you dove into a more serious role, but it became the film that I rewatched the most than all of the above. A hidden gem directed by Neil Towkin, known from Richie Rich and Learn to Drive. A packed cast on this one, starring alongside Chauncey, aka Squints from the Sandlot Kids, Gary Busey from Predator 2, Mark Gosselaar from Dead Man on Campus, and of course the late Kirstie Alley, known from Look Who's Talking and all of the rest of that series. Now, when I first contacted you, I had to preach my love for this movie, and it seemed like you were in shock by like that response.
Well, yeah, I mean, this movie Sticks and Stones did not get a theatrical release in the U.S., so it's pretty obscure. If you look it up on Letterboxd, there's very few, it has far fewer reviews and views than any of the other movies I acted in. And, you know, I got the role at an interesting time. I was like 12 going into 13. I just started junior high. And, you know, as a kid actor, you're a child, and then you're like a young adult, and you're going through puberty and all that. And so for me, it was kind of a transitional phase. And an awkward phase, you know, and basically school got more serious around then. And it's the last large role I did. And it's probably the biggest role in terms of real estate within the film, you know. Heavyweights and Bushwhacked were more ensembles of kids. And this is like a core group of 3, and then another kid who's the bully, the school bully. And so after making this film, which it was a good experience. I was happy with it. I had a good time. But just by virtue of my age and entering an awkward phase and auditioning for other things and not really getting roles, school becoming more of a priority, and, you know, eventually wanting to go to college and all that, it's kind of the end of the road for me as a child actor. It's very much you know, when a child actor kind of grows up a little bit. And so that film, in essence, closed the book on me as an actor. I continued to do a couple other things, smaller roles, and in college would act in plays and was in music videos that friends made and all sorts of random little things over the ensuing years and decades. But yeah, Sticks and Stones really was kind of like the final of the 3 movies that I would say I, you know, starred or co-starred in as a child actor. So in a sense, it's meaningful to me in a way that has nothing to do with the content of the movie itself. But it's, you know, it's a good story about friendship and dealing with bullies and all that sort of stuff. It was a fun shoot. Gary Busey, who played my father is a kind of legendary character as someone who's is a bit mentally, not all there. He had brain surgery after a motorcycle accident, and see, it's coming back to me. I was like, I don't know if I even have any stories to tell, but about Sticks and Stones, but for a tween actor, definitely a memorable experience, and the film dealt with some heavy stuff, and there's like a gun in the film. We had to kind of like do some firearms training and acting with a gun on set, especially a handful of years after the Crow and the Brandon Lee. Brandon Lee was like killed,
Right.
Due to some dereliction of safety protocol or whatever. So I remember it being very intense when we were doing these scenes with a gun, which obviously had blanks in it or was not loaded and stuff like that. But I remember those days being very intense, and it's like, me and the other character like wrestling, trying to get control of this gun. And yeah, that was very memorable and intense for a tween, I remember actually the Kirstie Alley character. I remember when I was cast in the film, they had told us that they were talking to Linda Hamilton about playing that role. And I think she had an issue with like kids and guns in general. And I believe that was her reason for not doing the film.
Right.
But I didn't really have much interaction with Kirstie Alley. Mark Paul Gosselaar I did interact with, and we all looked up to him and loved him from Saved by the Bell. And he was playing a real douchebag character in this, which was kind of funny. And he had his character, who's like the older brother, he had like a buddy or two buddies who he was hanging out with a lot. And one of them was played by this guy, Bo Jesse Christopher, who was very cool. And I was stoked because he was in Tank Girl. He was like one of the like wacky kangaroo guys in Tank Girl. So I thought he was very cool. But yeah, it was a fun core group. Chauncey, who's Squints from Sandlot, was like great fun. And, Justin Isfeld, who was the main kid in Sticks and Stones, who we would then see in the American Pie movies in a small scale. Yeah, he was great. And Jordan Brower, who played the bully, he was from The Big Green, and he was great. It was a nice little group of kids. Heavyweights and Bushwhacked had like 8, 12 kids maybe, and this was like 4, so it was a little more focused and fewer personalities, like to kind of like deal with that dynamic. It's a memorable experience, and that one was shot locally in the greater LA area, so that was kind of nice too. Didn't have to like go off to location with my parents for that.
I know it's a tough film to love as well because of the context, and while this film also has daytime movie and direct-to-DVD written all over it, like the performances, the message, the music, and the cinematography, and the overall atmosphere of this film is what drew me to it. And that, of course, I'm a massive Sandlot fan, so Squint's mouth, like in this film, great. Like, it's good to see him back doing baseball,
Yeah, totally. It is an intense film, and I think that's a fair thing to say. I remember the other kind of big thing that I can't believe, maybe I've just repressed this, but then I thought about the gun stuff, but I had like a nude scene. You see you've seen my butt. And that was a very intense scene. My character is being mercilessly bullied and is in a locker room, and whatever, he comes out of the shower and this kid like attacks him and throws him into the hallway and locks the door. And I'm like on the ground covering myself crying. Like, that was a very intense thing to do as a young actor, and I think I was psyched up to do it. I was like prepared to do it and ready to do it and access those emotions, but it was difficult. Luckily it didn't scar me or anything. I don't look back at that and say like, I wasn't I wasn't safeguarded enough, or, it was all handled very professionally and well. And was a closed set, and they brought some extras in, but I was clothed when they're filming them reacting to me and stuff like that. So the kids who were in the hall and see me on the ground, but
Right.
but again, just like, an intense experience for a 12-year-old. You have to kind of like have some wherewithal and self awareness to like be able to do that and handle it and not really be affected by it.
Absolutely. You took on a very, very brave role and as Book in this film, and you were basically bullied by your friends to some extent, but then to be annihilated by the bully. Like, I was crushed watching your character fall apart. Like,
Yeah.
what,
Sad scene.
yeah, I was going to say, what was it like for you to dive into that deep of a dramatic performance in that age?
Yeah. I mean, it's, at the time I probably approached it differently than I would now if I were acting in something. But, it's like you kind of just have to be systematic about it. First, I need to memorize my lines, right? And once I've got that down, I need to, figure out how I'm saying them in the moment and, trying to access a part of myself that can be emotionally true and drawing on other experiences from your life to kind of pull that out of yourself. So I think it was fairly standard. I didn't need to do any method acting sort of wallowing. But I could think back to times as a kid that I felt left out or, bullied in some way or another. Definitely not as much as in the film, but and you draw on those things in order to kind of like get there as an actor. And yeah, I did.
And the conflict and confrontation between you and Hayes, especially in the third act, is very intense and very, very well done. You managed to dive into that place, and I very highly applaud your performance for that one.
Well, thank you. My 12-year-old self thanks you. But yeah, no, I mean, I honestly, I haven't seen the movie in so long. I'd be curious to watch it again. Someone once sent me, I don't know if this is still on YouTube, but someone found the film. There's a YouTube account that would basically take movies and they would dub all of the dialogue into Russian. But it was one guy in a monotone doing all of the characters. Clearly, a garage basement operation. This is what he did. Films that maybe didn't have official Russian releases. I don't know. And so my friend sent this to me. He's like, "Oh my God, look at this." And I started watching it and it's Sticks and Stones with one monotone guy just saying all the dialogue in Russian. So that was the last time I looked at the beginning of it. I think I scrubbed around, but yeah, definitely a different way to view that movie.
Yeah, no, I revisit it quite often, and not just for the dark content, like I'm attracted to that or anything. I think I watched it at an early age, and like I said, I just love the music of the film too. Like the atmosphere is something I like putting on the background, like a comfort kind of film, minus all the screaming and stuff. I guess it's just
clearly it had an effect on you, and that was the idea, right? Was to make something for younger audiences about dealing with issues that young people face. So it resonated, and in that respect, we've got to say that the film accomplished what it set out to do. I'm sure you're not the only person who watched it and felt a certain kind of way about it.
Oh yeah, I think it's more. I connected a lot with Joey's character or Justin's character. Like I suffered a lot of that bullying kind of stuff in primary school, not at that extent. But the funniest thing is, I also have an older brother who used to kick my ass as well. So it's like I was like,
there you go.
That movie was written for me.
I'm glad that there are Sticks and Stones fans out there.
As triggering as this movie could be to some people, it is still a very powerful and undeniably a massive hidden gem that should at least be tried. And it has a powerful message in there that could still, resonate in some ways. Obviously, bullying is got its consequences and can backfire on bullies and all that stuff. But good things can come from bad things. But stop things getting spiraling out of control and look where they could end up. Like for a bully to watch this film as well and just look what could happen or what you're doing to these people, it's definitely could backfire very badly.
Yeah, it's a cautionary tale. And I'm reminded just now that the original script had a different title.
Right.
And I remember when we were making the film, we referred to it as Three Blind Mice. That's what it was called. So, a different title, a different analogy to a schoolyard nursery rhyme or whatever Three Blind Mice is. Yeah.
I actually really like that. Now, there's another question I was about to throw in there. Was there any indication from the writers or directors of what like inspired them, or what inspired you to do this? Was it like based on a true story, or like I can kind of see the Three Blind Mice right there as well?
Yeah, I can't remember. To be honest, I have to imagine it was somewhat drawn semi-autobiographically in certain ways, but I can't speak to that. I don't know to what extent.
Yeah, that's fine. Do you guys keep in touch at all? The Three Blind Mice keep in touch?
No, I haven't seen or heard from any of those guys in a long time. And you wonder if the film had come out in theaters or been more of a success or had a bigger audience, maybe we would, in the way that the Heavyweights folks, have reconnected. But no, never really did. I think I have a memory of seeing Chauncey at some point after that, but no, it's been a long time.
No, that's a shame. You guys pulled off it seemed like what a really good friendship would really look like. Something like the bond looked pretty genuine.
Well, that just means the acting is even better. It's really good acting, right? No, we were all friendly, but yeah, all of these projects. I mean, the kids in Bushwhacked, I haven't seen any of them in decades also, and it's like you come together, you're a core group, you do this thing, and then you're kind of on to the next thing. And it's funny that way. Like when you finish a project, you often get depressed, or when it comes out, and it's very much kind of, well, that's it. And some people I think are, some people just do develop great friendships and remain friends for years, or, I know a number of people who were child actors who are now grown-ups who may still be working as actors, and, they have hung on to some of those core friendships that they made back in the day. But I think maybe because I got out of acting, you kind of don't find yourself, going into an audition and running into people or stuff like that. You could imagine if I was continuing to act, I would see those kids in a lot of those rooms, oh, they're auditioning for the fat kid. Hey, it's all the guys from Heavyweights are trying out for the role or whatever, but,
well, Sticks and Stones is currently available to watch for free on Plex in Australia. Please make sure to check that one out. I think you'll have a really good time enjoying that one. But yes, over the years...
Or a bad time.
Yes, please proceed with caution on that one.
Yeah, indeed.
Over the years, you've moved behind the camera and jumped into editing, and you've just completed a feature film recently starring Michael Cera and Kirsten Stewart. Tell me a little bit about your time working on this film.
I edited this film, Sacramento, that came out in the States in April and is now available to rent or buy. And I'm sure it'll be streaming somewhere eventually, but I don't have that information yet. It's below my pay grade, or it's above my pay grade. Yeah, the director, writer, co-star Michael Angarano is a good friend. I edited his first feature film, which is called Avenues. And that was also my first film as an editor. So we didn't know each other before working together, but we bonded while working together in a way that editors and directors often can, because they're trapped in a room together for months, and either they emerge friends or enemies. But yeah, he had been developing Sacramento for many years, trying to get it made. It's a small film, assembled the dream cast finally, and made the film. And it was clear early on that I would edit the film unless, there was some scheduling issue. But yeah, I'm really, it's been a long journey. It's a real labor of love, and it's very exciting for all of us that it's finally out there, and seems to be resonating with people. And that's great. That's kind of all you hope for when you make an independent film, is that people will see it and, that people will enjoy it. For me, that's kind of the dream. It's definitely as an editor, the biggest project I've worked on. Got a bunch of friends together to go to the theater to see it on opening night. And what was cool was there were other people there who I didn't know, who were just there to see the movie. It wasn't like a private screening for my friends, and then no one ever heard of the film again. It's really cool. It has a life. It's out there. It's been fun to read reviews and see what people think, and hear from friends and colleagues and acquaintances who enjoyed it. It's really gratifying, and it makes a lot of hard work feel like it's paid off in some way.
Yeah, no, this one actually kind of flew under my radar, unfortunately, because of being an independent. Not many independent films get much recognition in the cinemas down here, but seeing that cast on it too, I was like, this is a must. I put it in that night that you told me about it and had a great time watching it. So yeah, this is definitely one people should check out. But yeah, editing can be very time consuming. Can you tell me a little bit about your process editing?
Yeah, I mean, on this film, Sacramento, we had about 16 weeks scheduled. And what was nice was I was able to start editing really on day 2 of them principal photography of shooting the film. The film shot in Los Angeles. I edited the film in this room that I'm sitting in right now, which is like sort of home office. It used to be a garage. Now it's my office. And yeah, I mean, I would receive the scenes in the order that they were shot and just start moving quickly, putting them together. I think because of my past life as a child actor, performance is obviously a huge important part of a finished film. But for an editor, I think the thing that people don't think about when they think about what does an editor do, what is editing, I think a lot of people think they chose the best takes and they cut out the stuff that didn't belong in the movie. And maybe they, worked on the rhythm and made it a little faster or something. They took out all the bad stuff. But for me, I think the main thing that an editor does is work with the actors, work with the footage that the actors give them in order to sculpt and hone and kind of refine performances, because an actor is giving you 5-10 takes of their close-up, let's say, in a scene, and the emotions from take to take are going to vary. And the director is going to tell them to do one a little more intense, to do one a little sadder, a little more playful, whatever. And so you then have all this raw material that is wildly varied. And that doesn't mean that the actor isn't in control of their character, but it means that it's an editor's job to then create an emotional through line so that when you're watching the film, a performance feels consistent. It feels like it's the same human being throughout.
Yeah.
And when editing is functioning at its best, you don't think about that at all, and it's seamless. So for me, it's very much the job is going through all of this footage systematically and meticulously, responding to it and seeing what makes me laugh, what makes me cry, what makes me ask good questions, the right questions, what makes me ask the wrong questions, I'm not going to use it. And over time, fusing that together into a relatively seamless whole that is the movie, the finished movie. So I love editing because I think it is secretly like kind of where movies are, or maybe not so secretly, it's where movies are made. You could give the same footage to 2 different editors, let's say a month long shoot, and you could end up with 2 wildly different films, even if they were following the script verbatim. And then if we said, you can reorder scenes, you could cut out scenes, I mean, they would be even more different. You could pull a comedy and a drama from the same batch of footage, probably, So I find it very fun, very rewarding. As a lover of film, it feels to me like kind of the ultimate, but a lover of film and also someone who likes to stay inside. It's kind of perfect for me. I get to kind of be here, work alongside the director, help them achieve their vision, and, feel a sense of ownership as well. So it's the best. And Sacramento, editing it was so fun. Michael and I, the vibe was great. There's a lot of trust there because we worked together before. And we have a shorthand, we have shared references, movies that he is trying to emulate in various ways, and a love of music and kind of talking about the music of the film and trying out different songs in different scenes. So it's a joy. I'm really proud of the movie and the work, and I love just kind of getting into the material and looking at a Kristen Stewart or a Michael Cera, seeing all the variety of options that they've given you, and then kind of being responsible for creating not creating their character, but working with them, even if we're not in the same room, I mean, I hadn't met Kristen Stewart until the premiere of the film, but I felt like I knew her. I knew this character well and was able to kind of help sculpt that. So it's a privilege, I think, for someone who loves acting, loves actors, and loves film to play that role. It's kind of the dream job, really, for me.
Yeah, no, I definitely think editing is very important on how the movie flows. As you said, like the humor in this film like had me in stitches, and I know your editing made the punchlines work a lot harder. Like, for example, the push-up scene at the start, or like the dumping of the ashes, like it's just perfectly executed, and it made that scene flow so much better. So like, yeah, it's absolutely amazing there. But yeah, the storytelling through editing, the music cues, and is a bigger tribute than most people are aware of. But yeah, well, that's something I can truly appreciate. But the movie itself felt like there was a lot of takes there, like a lot of different camera angles going. So it would have been like a plethora of footage, as you already said, different variants of how they portrayed the performance of sad, action, angry, sad, or whatever. So it seemed like there was a lot of footage to go through.
Yeah, certain scenes there was more than others. There's a great scene where the two Michaels are sitting on a bench and they're kind of using therapy speak and trying to analyze the other one. This is right after the ashes scene that you mentioned, and that was shot very, very, very quickly. Like, I think like maximum 2 takes and 3 angles. So like one to 2 takes for 3 different angles, and that's it. Because they just had a limited amount of time. The light was at a certain angle. And so you contrast that with like, there's a scene in a gym where there's like a wrestling sequence. And that was an entire day of shooting. It ended, I think, 2.5 hours of footage, something like that. That you then whittle into a 3-minute scene. But then, so I think it's kind of about like, how have they scheduled it? If it's a smaller independent film, there's just fewer shoot days, Sacramento was 22 shoot days. So on some days they're really cramming things in and they're moving really quickly, and you're able to work only with what has been given to you, you don't have the luxury of reshoots necessarily or pickups later on a smaller film. So it becomes about creative problem solving. But like the scene that I mentioned on the bench that only had 1 or 2 takes, it was all there. They had it. If they hadn't gotten what they needed, they would have done another take, but
yeah,
they had rehearsed that dialogue a lot and it was fairly straightforward and no crazy camera moves. So, they moved on to the next scene.
They definitely nailed that scene. There's nothing more they could have done to that one. Perfect, for sure. I feel you on that one. The movie itself kind of reminds me a little bit of that recent release, A Real Pain. Did you catch that one?
Yeah, I did. We, when we had been working on the film for some years, and when we learned about A Real Pain, we were like, oh man, on paper, it sounds really similar. And I think at their hearts, they're pretty different movies, but I agree that, the setup and the sort of odd couple on a trip, and the character types are similar. And for a film, a small film, it's, you always, you can't control the other films that are coming out, obviously. And, that film came out first. I think they're very different films. I think they're very much their own thing and they do things well. But some of the films that we were talking about when we were gearing up to make this film were like Sideways, which is a very similar kind of road trip, and even some of the stuff in Swingers, and older 70s films like Scarecrow with Pacino, and Mikey and Nicky with John Cassavetes. And so, yeah, there's tons of movies that Michael drew from. But yeah, it is very much a classic trope of a, midnight run. There's so many odd couple on the road sort of movies that were fun reference points for Michael and Chris when they wrote it, and in the editing room as well, talking about putting the movie together.
Yeah, I definitely agree. It's only the setup there that's similar, and I only drew that kind of comparison because I watched that one recently as well.
Oh, sure.
Yeah,
it's natural. It's recency bias, and also it's pretty obvious. They came out very recently and is award winning, and it's very fresh in everyone's minds.
Yeah, no, it's a good movie. A bit more dramatic. I prefer this one because it's got the humor in there, and I love Michael Cera a lot. So like the comedy and everything was amazing. So yeah, really enjoyed it, and you did an excellent job editing that one. You should be definitely very proud of that. And yeah, definitely highly recommended to check it out. It's now available to rent or buy on Apple TV.
Yeah, I want to look at the data and see the Australian box office numbers have a little spike. Or not box office, but streaming numbers or whatever. So
yeah. Speaking of Australia, have you ever been down here before?
Yeah, I have actually. I learned to read in Australia. That's my claim to Australian fame, or my own association with Australia. I was in Sydney as a 5-year-old. My father, who had a career in editing, he directed a few films, and one of them was the 1989. The Punisher, starring Dolph Lundgren and Lou Gossett Jr., which filmed in Sydney, and had a number of Australian actors in smaller roles, including the great Barry Otto. I was just a kid learning, they put me in school for a few months. I learned how to read. When I was in my 20s, I was working, there was a period of time that I was working on the road with various musicians, and found myself in Australia again and visited, Sydney, Adelaide, Perth, Melbourne, and I'm forgetting one, but it was a great time. I always enjoyed it down there, albeit briefly when I was there in my 20s, but it would be fun to make it back one of these days.
All right, here at Movieland, we love recommending movies. So I would like you to give us 6 movies you recommend us to watch, old, new, whatever you want.
Wow, 6. Okay. All right. I've got a few that are fresh in my mind that I've seen in the last year, and they're, well, we'll see where we go. My favorite movie of last year is this American independent film called Good One. It premiered at Sundance. The director is India Donaldson. It's a very low key film. Kind of reminds me of like Kelly Reichardt's films. It's essentially about a father, daughter, and friend of the father going on a weekend hiking camping trip. It's just character piece. I loved it. There's a Canadian film called Universal Language from last year that was Canada's submission for Best Foreign Language Film at the Oscars. It's a really cool, unique film that is kind of pays tribute to like Iranian cinema of the 80s, 90s. Really unique, funny, fresh, different movie, unlike anything I've seen in a while. I'm going to look at my DVD collection here. Sure. There's a film from the 90s that I love called Party Girl, starring Parker Posey, another independent film. I'm kind of an indie kid, ultimately. These were the movies that Party Girl was like a movie I remember seeing as a younger person in the 90s and just loving. And so that's 3 movies, right?
Yes.
Let's see. One of my very favorite movies is Under the Skin, the Jonathan Glazer film starring Scarlett Johansson, with an amazing score by Mika Levy. I love that movie. I love all of Jonathan Glazer's movies, actually, but I think Under the Skin is pretty fantastic. What is that, 4? Okay, I've got 2 more. We're going to go with, I love Mike Leigh, and there's a Mike Leigh film called Life is Sweet that when I was younger, my dad was always trying to get me to watch this movie, and I thought the title sounded lame. And I was like, that sounds lame. Life is Sweet. I don't think life is sweet, but I finally saw the film, and it's one of my favorite movies. I love it. Fantastic ensemble, particularly great and hilarious performance by Timothy Spall. And then finally, I would say the Jacques Tati film Playtime, the French film from the 60s. It's one of my all-time favorite movies, beautifully restored by the Criterion Collection at some point, and I've seen it theatrically twice in 70 millimeter, and was a religious experience for me. I love that movie. I know it was a big influence on Punch Drunk Love, or at least the work of Jacques Tati was on Paul Thomas Anderson. So yeah, those are 6 movies I like, and I'm sure I sure I could name another 6 if we sat around longer.
That'd be great. There's definitely someone here that I'm going to check out, and I'll give you my review once I've watched them. So I appreciate that very much. And I also appreciate you for joining us, Max. I wish you all the best with your future work. And remember, hips out, in front of the shoulders, no cherries, no hooks, just gas. Don't forget to be kind, rewind, and don't put Twinkies on your pizza.
Oh, yeah. You don't want to do that. Thanks for having me, Sean. It was a good time.
Thanks, buddy.
Download the digital Movieland magazine for free at movieland.au. Grab your popcorn and follow us, because we bring you a one-stop shop for news on new releases at the cinema, digital rentals, and all of the streaming services combined. Catch all of this and more at our website, movieland.au. Don't forget to follow us on social media for daily news, movie recommendations, and spoiler-free reviews.